Hello and welcome to the Gameweek 6 edition of the FPL School podcast. I am your host Matthias, and with me today I have my co-host Kevin, who is a big fan of Julian Alvarez, or Julian Alvarez as I should say. But you don't have him currently, I think, in your FPL team. So how do you feel about Alvarez as an FPL pick at this moment in time? Because there's not really that much debate anymore because he scored 2 goals in the Champions League, and now it seems like pretty much everyone is jumping on the bandwagon. But how do you feel about Álvarez in general and him as a player? I know you've talked about him for a long time, how you like him and stuff. So how do you feel about Álvarez in general? And do you think he is that number one bandwagon guy we should go for after 2 weeks of Sterling and Son sort of failing to live up to the hype?
Yeah, no, I've always been a big fan. I've made a lot of jokes that have now made people seriously consider whether he's actually better than Haaland or not, which is a bit of a harsh criticism towards Haaland, who's clearly just going through a bad spell of just missing the chances that he normally buries. But that's not to take away from Julian Alvarez. We've always known that his quality has been this high. I love Ferran Torres at Barcelona, but the fact that we could have signed Julian Alvarez over Ferran Torres for 40 million less as well, it still boggles me to this day. So I think absolutely get on the bandwagon, especially if he continues to play, and as shown with the sort of like how Brian Mbeumo's better without Tony. Alvarez minutes is much better when De Bruyne's not playing. So yeah, I think it's the hype is real. He's, proving that it's not a fluke. And I guess with some cases, with the assists and stuff, you can say there's some luck, I guess, but you make your own luck at the end of the day. And I think Julian Alvarez has just taken his chance and is proving the fact that he wants to stay. I mean, it's very strong by him to even renew his contract as early as he did, because he knows himself that he backs himself that he can actually make a dent here, rather than what a lot of people would do in his situation, try and put feelers out so he can be a starter somewhere else. But he knows that he can go all the way.
Yeah, and I think sort of like the whole notion that he's only Haaland's backup is sort of gone now, because he is evolving his game pretty much every single game, or every single season at least. With Man City, he's going to play more as like the number 10 sort of behind Haaland sort of type role, and he's been really good at that as well. And speaking of the assists, you mentioned that it's like some people have said that his assists have been lucky, but I think I made this point on Twitter that if you actually go back and look at his assists, most of them are not that lucky. Like he has 1-2 penalties, and that's not lucky. That's 0.76 expected goals. Those penalties, it doesn't count in the expected assist stat, as you can see above, like at the top there. 1.4 expected assists is what Alvarez has, but that doesn't include the penalties. And it doesn't include the pass that he had for Haaland where he scored against, Fulham? When he passed it through and the Fulham defender touched the ball. So because the Fulham defender touched the ball, the expected assist wasn't counted. But Alvarez actually got the assist in FPL because the ball didn't really change direction either. So yeah, I think out of the 5 assists he had so far, only the Doku assist is really like lucky, I guess. But that's what's going to happen with Alvarez when he gets to play and be like the sort of De Bruyne type player for Man City currently. So yeah, I've had Alvarez since Game Week 3. I'm very happy about how that has gone so far, and I'm happy to see more people joining me in having him, I guess. I mean, it's been a nice differential, but it's also kind of nice to just have Alvarez and don't worry about the Jackson potential double-digit haul, I guess. But yeah, most people are pretty tired of Jackson at this point. But yeah, let's move on to what happened in Game Week 5, and let's just take a look at your team quickly. Like most people, you didn't have the best of game weeks, but 38 points isn't too bad, actually. You actually had Salah, which is something that most people can't really say, because yeah, Salah is not really the most popular pick, especially in terms of like FPL managers that you see on the internet quite a lot. So it's actually like a decent game week for you all in all, but you have a couple of things with your team as well. Gusto on the bench. That was mishap because of the you can talk about it yourself. What happened this game week? You made 0 transfers, which I think is good, because otherwise you would have brought in a Spurs midfielder and they didn't really get any points. But yeah, talk about your team. How did it go and what went wrong, what went right, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, There's obviously video footage of me saying that I would triple captain Richarlison before the Sheffield game. So the fact that you took me away from that, I'll never forgive you. But
I'm sorry about
besides
that.
that, in all seriousness, this a lot of the goal scorers from this game week says everything about how unlikely of a game week it was because all the noticeable or notable um, players and stuff just didn't score. I mean, Holland eventually scored when he had like 80 chances. So, and anyone of us that actually did Holland captain when everyone else went for Matters and Son and all this stuff should have been punished way harder
Yeah.
than just the 12 points. But that being said, Sterling, he almost did Depay in the sense like he got it almost so perfect,
Mm.
but it takes a certain Frenchness to it to get that sort of dip.
Wasn't quite the same dip. Yeah.
But still upper 90
It was
as
nice.
you
It was
can
really
get.
nice.
Yeah.
But Paye's free kick against Crystal Palace is next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, then of course, Chilwell not starting. I
Yeah.
didn't suspect that. Obviously, I did actually uh, wake up and try to do Gusto in, and I thought it registered. And then all of a sudden it said it didn't register. And it was like, oh, games being updated. And that was, to be fair, with 2 minutes to go. But regardless, I did it and it didn't register. So whatever.
Yeah.
I can't be too mad at them because I should have fixed that sooner myself. But that being said, I still was under the impression that Bournemouth were going to score. So, whatever. Because if Estupinian had played, they probably would have won 8-0 against Man United. So, yeah, it's tough. But, what can I really say? Wissa missed like 60 chances, and Buemo was invisible for me most of the game. Bruno Fernandes was playing at center back for most of the game. Nuno, who would have been Gusto, that's just the annoying thing because Tavares would have been the one who was on the third bench or second bench if I had fixed things around. So can't really get too mad at him. I'm actually glad he didn't get a yellow card or anything.
Yeah.
Flecken sort of screwed up.
Terrible game from him.
And I don't know. I feel like there was also some harsh decisions against him and all this type of stuff too. I can't really be mad. I mean, of course, it's a bit annoying that I couldn't get the 40-point mark, which I would have gone if Gusto had played. But all things considered, I did what I felt was the correct moves. I mean, because if I had captain Salah and Holland's chances had gone in, I'd look like a real asshole. So, all things considered, yeah, I'm not too unhappy with this. I think it's a massive write-off for a lot of managers, except the people who got super lucky, like, oh, I was going to play Sven Botman, as you'll hear from my brother eventually in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we'll get to your brother pretty soon. It's a bit of a spoiler for Manager of the Week. But before we get to your brother, we have to talk about Chemos' team as well. The third founding member of the FPL Scope. He had 1 point less than you. You can sort of laugh at him because he actually did the Bowen to Son move. That in itself didn't really change much. Bowen got pretty much the exact same score as Son, I think. I think both guys ended up with 2 points. But yeah, he jumped on Son. He has Maddison already. That didn't work out. It could have worked out because Maddison should have had a penalty that Son probably would have taken and scored. So in that sense, he was kind of unlucky. His bench is also not the best, so he got Bayer in for Estupinian off the bench. Yeah, that's you actually started Estupinian, so that's what happened with you as well. You got Tavares off the bench when you wanted Gusto. But yeah, other than that, he had Saliba, which you didn't have. 6 points, got a clean sheet against Everton. Other than that, he also has Nick Jackson, or had Nick Jackson, as I should say. That's a bit of a spoiler as well, who once again didn't really impress. So yeah, what do you think about Chemos' team and his plans going forward and stuff? Would you consider wildcarding with this team, or would you just stick with it? Do you think he has like a decent team for the future?
I think he has a pretty good sort of platform just to make some smaller changes. I mean, if he wants to switch Matoma and Jackson for like an Alvarez and Diaby, there you go, done and done. Pretty much. So that would be my suggestions for him. I'd say stand pat with the wild card until what is it, game week like 8 or 9 when a lot of teams get better fixtures.
9 or 10 mostly.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd say stand pat until then. Maybe even get the double transfers so you can do Jackson and Matoma out. I mean, we already know what he's done to Mr. Jackson there, but we'll talk about that in a second.
And Mitoma plays against Bournemouth at home as well, so I think you should keep him for this week at least. But if he's wildcarding in week 9 or 10, then Mitoma out after the game against Bournemouth makes sense as well.
Yeah.
But we'll get to his plans eventually. But yeah, the bench is also not the best. He has Baldock, who's been injured pretty much all the season, and he plays for Sheffield United anyway, so he's kind of a wash. And Mobama hasn't gotten a single minute for West Ham yet. Maybe he'll play tomorrow or today if you're watching this on Thursday in the Europa League. But yeah, so yeah, he has some issues, but like you, not entirely sure. But yeah, we'll get to talk more about that later. But yeah, Son and Madison just has to stick it out with them in the tougher matches now against Arsenal and Liverpool. They might score. It's really interesting to see Spurs as well, because normally they would beat Sheffield United quite clearly, and they still look like a really good team. So yeah, I don't think he should be too unhappy with having Spurs players going forward. He doesn't have a doggy though, but for the next 2 game weeks against Arsenal and Liverpool, that's probably a good thing. So that's pretty much Chemos' score. And now we get to the manager of the week, and his name is Tim Nisanka. And as you can see from Kevin's Twitter handle there, his name is Kev Nisanka, and that means that you guys are related, and you are quite closely related, and you're quite closely in proximity now as well, because I think Tim is sitting pretty close by. So yeah, key differentials for second week running. He has the key differentials, or the key differentials in the squad for the manager of the week is Salah and Álvarez. And then on top of that, Tim has Botman as well. But is Tim ready to make a little
Tim,
cameo?
come here. Tim. He's got headphones on whilst we're recording, so he can't hear me. Tim. 1 second.
Yeah, I'll just talk while you try to get Tim. Throw things at him. Botman 9 points. Really nice.
You're getting interviewed now by the FPL scope. I don't want to be in this, is what he's saying.
Okay, he doesn't have to be. That's fine.
Okay, so switch. We can.
But yeah, it's a pretty nice team. It's pretty close to what I have actually for the second week in a row.
You'll find out. What's that, sorry?
He has a pretty nice team. It's actually pretty close to my team for the second week in a row. The manager of the week has a pretty close team to my team, so pretty happy about that.
Huh? No, obviously not.
Not now. I mean, will I be?
Yes, of course you will be in shot. Just hold the microphone. You'll see there's preview there, so you can see everything. That's it. He'll just ask you a few questions about that. No one knows them.
Hello, manager.
Hello.
Is it the manager of the week I'm speaking to?
Yes, indeed.
How does it feel to be manager of the week for the FPL Scope? It's quite a big league as well. I think it's around like 250 or 300 people there now.
Yeah. No, it was cool. I've had a decent month so far.
Yeah.
Been trying hard to try to catch up to you.
Yeah, I think you're 5 points behind me now or something. But
something like that.
We have a pretty similar team. The only difference is the reason that you got the manager of the week, basically, because like compared to me, is because of Botman. You had 9 points from Botman.
Yes.
So yeah,
I agonized over whether to start him or Stupinan and chose him, and it didn't even matter.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, if Stupinan had played, you saw Lamptey get 2 assists, so maybe Stupinan would have outscored Botman. If
maybe.
That's the case, but
yeah,
it's hard to know really. But yeah, how do you feel about your season so far? And I have one more question to ask you. Have you tried to copy my team, or is it just coincidence that you have a pretty similar team to me?
I think it's coincidence. I mean, I do listen to the podcast a bit here and there. I obviously speak to Kevin. I think we all have similar footballing opinions as well.
Except for Lampard between you and I, but that's a different story.
There are always a few differences that make the difference, if you will. But no, I think it's coincidence because I don't really look at other people's teams that much. throughout the season, I try to look at it a little bit, and I did at the start of the season, and I did draw the conclusion that quite a few of us have a lot of things in common, and yeah, I think the main one was that I started off with Mitoma, and then I felt like I had to have Mbeumo, and I brought Mbeumo in, and then he's been quiet ever since.
Yeah, so you're the reason he's cursed. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you looking to sell him, or are you going to keep him?
If I recall correctly, I'm going to keep him for a few weeks because of the fixtures, and then I'll evaluate how it's gone.
Yeah, fair enough. We can actually just jump to your plans as well, because I've made a couple of potential transfer moves for you already. So I think your team is actually really good for this game week already. As you can see, you have pretty much only home fixtures except for Botman and Onana, who play Sheffield United and Burnley. So I think you could just stand pat and get 2 transfers for next week, especially seeing as you already have a Newcastle defender.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's the way I was angling at the moment, anyway.
Yeah. You obviously, there's also a different thing I need to ask you, because you're a Chelsea fan and you don't have Chilwell or Jackson, who are pretty popular FPL picks. Why is that?
Yes. I mean, I find, and it might not be true, but I think a lot of fans feel this way, that I jinx the team by having players.
Yeah.
And whether I have superpowers or not, in the past, whenever I brought Chelsea players in, things have gone wrong. And as an example, in draft, I mean, okay, to be fair, Reece James is injury prone. I picked Reece James, and I picked another Chelsea player, and they both got injured. I can't remember who now. I think and yeah, it's just been a nightmare. So that's why I didn't. But with Sterling and with the Nottingham game and how he did in the game just before, I thought, all right, I've been watching him, 90 minutes every game.
Yeah.
He is looking great.
Yeah.
And he's very cheap.
Still
so I'll bring him in. Yeah. I think he's still our best player at the moment. Or at least best attacking player at the moment. So I'm staying put with him. But that has led to me not getting anyone else. I know that Chilwell does look great, and if I do bring someone else in, it might be him. Although I did think he looked tired last week.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Chelsea didn't start him, and you could tell because he was misplacing balls. He was a bit slow on the run, all that kind of stuff.
So what do you think?
That's the main reason why.
In terms of their lineup, do you think Chilwell is going to continue playing as the left wing player, or is he going to be part of the back four, or is he just going to be dropped entirely, do you think?
I think Chilwell is the favored left back. Whether Poch will stick to the 4 in the back or 5 in the back, we'll see. But I think Chilwell will always feature the way things are going at the minute. As long as he's fit, I think he's favored over the many left-sided players. That's why he's even been in the more offensive role.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the impression I get. Poch does insist that he's not really playing a back 5, and that Chilwell is sort of playing a left back position or LWB kind of thing, but he was playing as a winger for at least a couple of those games.
Definitely.
So I don't know how much Poch can insist on that, but I definitely think Chilwell is a good asset, and even if he plays as left back rather than playing more forward, he has been taking the corners a lot and all that kind of stuff from that left hand side. So I think he is going to get points.
Yeah, the one sort of weak point, if I would have to say one player on your team, would probably be Saliba, because Arsenal have some pretty tough fixtures coming up. They have a decent fixture in game week. Game week 7 next game week. So he's potentially one player you could sell this week. And my suggestions would either be to go double Newcastle with Fabian Schär if you want to go that way, because you already have Botman. You might as well because most people are going to bring in Botman now, or Trippier, or at least one Newcastle defender, but you can stay ahead of the curve and have another Newcastle defender as well. That's one of the suggestions. And the other one is kind of more on the risky side, going Saliba to Kabore, which would save you some money as well, but also you'd get that double game week fixture for next week. But you do have that double game week fixture for Jordan Bayer on your bench, but he's playing Newcastle in one of the games, so it's not as lucrative, I guess. But what do you feel about do you still think you're going to stand pat, or are you going to consider Saliba out?
I think so. I think I think Spurs at home is going to have goals, so he'll probably concede. But I think I'll stay put just so I can have two swaps. I do think the call for Shar is good. I had double Newcastle last year. I think a lot of people did eventually, and it was fruitful. So it might work this year as well. The only real sort of, I don't know, uneasiness I have for my team is Onana, because United have been awful and he's sort of not been great either. But that was a bet from game week 1 that has just sort of ridden the team for now anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there are any like standout goalkeepers. I think you should just ride out Onana until you wildcard, which could be game week 9 or 10, which most people will do, or you could save it for later as well when you're more in need, because you have Salah and Álvarez already, which are like the two players people are targeting on a wildcard right now. So yeah, I think you're in a pretty good position, and definitely in a good position being manager of the week. So congratulations to that, and let's see if you can do it another time. But yeah, thank you for your cameo as well on the podcast. You can get Kevin back now, get the worst Nisanka brother on the podcast.
Thank you that you recognize that.
So yeah, we move on to Kevin, and we are going to talk about something that Kevin is actually better at than me, and that is predicting results, because I'm pretty poor when it comes to that. And Kevin has actually gotten a couple of scorelines correctly this week, once we get him back on the podcast with his Giants jersey. Are you with us, Kevin?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going on to something that is somewhere where you're having a pretty big lead against me now, and that is the predicted results. You had 2 correct scorelines this game week, 2 3-1 scores, Liverpool against Wolves and Aston Villa against Crystal Palace. Both of them were pretty late goals for both Liverpool and Aston Villa to secure that. We also had 4 incorrect results, and I just want to ask, out of the 4 incorrect results, which one is the one that you kind of regret the most, or that you like sort of should have seen coming the most?
I don't know what the hell you're trying to angle at, okay? But it's Man United, obviously.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
You bastard. I know you're trying to angle me for why did I say Everton would win? Because we normally always do. But yeah, like I said in the previous video, United did nothing to sort of repay my sort of faith in them, and that match sort of showed every reason why. I am definitely going to keep tabs on the Bayern game, but like, of course, them losing to Bayern isn't so shocking, but it is going to be a question of how they lose to Bayern that will make me wonder about their, future, Eric Ten Hag's future, and also whether they are, good FPL assets. I mean, obviously they have really easy games, and these are the sort of bullshit games that Man United tend to get things rolling again, but I'm just frustrated. I feel like there's so many more fun players that I can have, like Diaby, who we both are big fans of from Leverkusen, and is now balling out at Aston Villa. So yeah, I definitely considering my options there for sure.
Yeah, but you have a lead, pretty sizable. Like I said, you got 2 scorelines correctly predicted, Liverpool and Aston Villa. I guess you're happy about that. And let's just take a look at the next week's predictions actually already, because for the first time this season, you've actually gone against Everton. I did kind of angle towards that, but now you've joined me on trying to jinx the team that or counter jinx, I guess, the team that you're supporting, because I've been betting against West Ham every single week, and that has not gone well for me in the scoreline predictions, but it's gone really well for West Ham. So finally you're on the bandwagon with me there. But before we get to that, let's just move quickly through each scoreline. Crystal Palace against Fulham, we have the exact same score, 2-0 for Crystal Palace. I think it makes sense. Palace are a really solid home team. Fulham are potentially the worst team in the league currently, especially if you look at the expected numbers. It's pretty terrible. They did beat Luton, but that was kind of underserved as well. 2-0. Any comments about this fixture?
Not really. If you're one of the lucky owners of Eze, I'd say, yeah, well done, because I think this is the sort of game where he'll run riot. Nothing, like you said, Luton impressed me more in that win So that says everything about what I think about Fulham and their chances, generally speaking. Something's got to give. I don't know if it's maybe some recruitment changes in January or potentially Marco Silva, or just maybe they're just destined to be just a very below average club this season, because I have not been inspired or thought anything looked good from Fulham, even though they have way more points than Everton. So that says a lot about how poor we think Fulham have been this season.
Yeah. Speaking of below average Premier League teams, we have the next fixture, which is between Luton and Wolverhampton. And yet again, I don't know why I keep having faith in Luton, but I've gone for a 1-0 Luton win against Wolverhampton. You've gone for the 2-1 Wolves win over Luton. For me, it's more just like we haven't really seen much from Luton at home. They've faced the mighty West Ham at home only this time, or so far this season. I think against Wolves, Wolves are just a pretty terrible team when it comes to finishing their chances, as we've seen. And they don't really create much expected goals on top of that either. So yeah, I can see Luton. I think 1-0 is kind of, I'm expecting them to win 1-0 through Carlton Morris winning goal and make everyone panic about having double game week players from Luton in the next game week. So that's my thinking. It's kind of more like a banter sort of suggestion, but yeah, it would be fun to see Luton win their first match at home in the Premier League. But you've gone for Wolves. Any comments about that?
Yeah, I feel like Wolves have been really unlucky with a lot of their losses recently. They create chance after chance after chance. It's just the lack of end product that's cost them even more dramatic wins this season. So I think Luton, sadly, have just sort of been the club that everyone's shat on. So I think that's the only reason why I think it'll come into fruition. I also really, really, really loved what I saw at Pedro Neto last game, even though they ended up losing 3-1. So yeah, I think for that reason alone, that's the main catalyst to why I think Luton won't get a win. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, because I think they've also been really unlucky in a lot of their games, but nah, I still think Wolves have the edge. They have the better players. They have a Premier League squad mainly as well.
Yeah. Next up, we have Man City against Nottingham Forest. We've both gone with 4-1 for Man City. And the only question I'm going to ask you here is, do you think there's a chance City can keep a clean sheet here? Because they always seem to concede that one goal. And why do you think that is?
I think it's, I'll be completely honest, I think it's a lapse of sort of ruthlessness that they tend to have. Like, the Man City team, like, even though they won the treble last year, they didn't they rarely kept a clean sheet compared to, like, you know, the Peps of past, when he's had like Joe Hart in goal and still managed to keep clean sheets like left and right. So I think they just get complacent when they're dominating, right? So they just get countered on, and who worse to get countered on by Taiwanese, who's been scoring, assisting left and right, and then Anthony Elanga, who's the former United product, who will probably want to. He tends to score in the bigger games as well. So, yeah, I think it's due to that. I think it's due to that and their complacency in general, because it feels like they don't give a shit that they concede. They're just like, we scored 4 or 5. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Whilst Pep is losing his shit just 24/7, being like, why again, and every time. So, yeah, that's why. I mean, don't get me wrong, this could easily end up being 4-0 or 5-0. But when you have players in form and, you know, FPL options for sure, once Nottingham Forest's matches get a little bit easier, definitely. Yeah,
I think the same. I think Avani and Elanga could mean that one goal for Nottingham Forest. Avani has to keep up his streak because he's on, like, I don't know how many Premier League games in total now he's had a return, but it's getting pretty crazy for Avani. He's a really good striker who we both like, but yeah. Moving on to the next fixture, we have Brentford against Everton. A sore spot for you because Everton have deserved more so far this season, but playing away against Brentford is always going to be a tough fixture. So I've actually gone closer for Everton than you have. I have 2-1 for Brentford and you have 3-1 for Brentford. Do you feel like there's a chance Everton could get all 3 points here after seeing Brentford against Newcastle, for example?
If Dyche wants to keep his job, yeah. Like, seriously, I don't understand how much, like, I get it, this whole cycle of new manager doesn't work out, and I get that, but I don't know, something's got to give, and, the players are only as good as they are instructed to be in that regard. So I think with a more dynamic manager, better things can happen. And people are like, oh, Dyche took Burnley to Europe, blah, 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 blah. But we're not Burnley at the end of the day. We have higher ambitions and have achieved more than what we've currently done for the last couple of years. And I think Dyche's sort of tactics just doesn't suit us, to be completely honest. But don't get me wrong. I think he's been really unlucky for a lot of the games. Many of the losses should have been wins. Many of these random, late losses should have been a draw and all this type of stuff too. So it is a bit unfair to be so harsh on him. But at the same time, what else are we meant to do? Are we just meant to be okay losing every game every week? Because that's sort of the track record we've had. We've only got one draw in the last 5 games?
Yeah.
Has it been 5
5
weeks?
matches.
Yeah. That's pretty dreadful. Yes, Arsenal was expected to be a loss, but Fulham, Wolves, Sheffield, all these sort
Easy
of matches
fixtures as well.
was the reason why I wanted to triple up on Everton, because I'm like, oh, it's easy games. These are the ones you get your confidence from. Nope, apparently not. So yeah, I think Dyche has a lot of things he needs to work out, and if he wants to settle the fans a little bit, he's gonna have to try and get a result here. However, Brentford away, is never an easy game.
Yeah, you did mention Burnley briefly, and that's the next fixture. Burnley at home against Man United. Burnley have similarly struggled like Everton, but they seem to score a goal every game, and that's what we've gone for here, both of us. 1 goal for Burnley, but 3 goals for Man United. So we're thinking Man United will actually bounce back this time around.
Yeah.
How do you see that happening for Man United? Do you think Højlund is going to be the star? Or do you think Rashford, Fernandes? How do you see Man United coming back now and winning 3-1?
I think Foster's red card is going to be the main big reason why I think Burnley are going to be out of it. Not to say that they don't have good replacements. We've done some decent reviews on the good replacements, but it's just more, he's such a focal point to their attack. And yeah, I think this has to be sort of the game that United get out of their funk from. They've done it so many times in the past. Ten Hag's reputation has been, and stock has been, the lowest it's ever been. So that's why I think they'll bounce back with this. And it seems like Burnley are destined for the championship next season. So
yeah,
sadly, yeah,
could be.
I think this will be the bounce back win that Man United need. Yeah.
Next up, we're moving on to the Sunday games. We actually have 4 matches at the same time on the Sunday. I don't really understand how the Premier League are setting up their fixtures. They have no early fixture on Saturday, and then they have 5 fixtures at the same time on Sunday, on top of 3 fixtures at the same time on Saturday. And the whole TV deal is a whole another ordeal that we don't have to get into. But either way, Arsenal Spurs is probably the biggest game out of the whole game week. And we both gone for a 1-goal win for Arsenal. I have 2-1 for Arsenal. You have 3-2 for Arsenal. As always with these tight games, can you see Spurs getting all 3 points?
I don't think so. Had this match been at home, yes. Had it been a Spurs home match, then yeah, I think it could be. But I think right now it's just about Arsenal. Arsenal and Spurs have been very similar to me in regards to that. They've been just equally as high, and which is crazy to think, because prior to the season, I had no, in our predictions, we said that Spurs wouldn't be top 4. If I remember correctly, but they're looking like a top 4 club with the way they're handling things. And both teams snuck a win against United, which I guess seems to be very easy these days. So yeah, I think it's just home advantage that's going to play the biggest role. Arsenal at the Emirates, haven't lost to Spurs in a little bit. So yeah, I think that's going to be the reason. I still also think it's going to be a high scoring game because I feel like both teams can't defend properly. Oh, Everton, but it doesn't matter that he kept a clean sheet against Everton. You know, it's when the big boys show up, it's going to be tough. And I think both now that Richarlison scored, Kulusevski scored, and Matters and Son got super unlucky in the previous game, I think it's going to be a high scoring affair. I think Arsenal have got things going. Saka's looking good. Odegaard's looking good. Martinelli's super unlucky. Trossard was fantastic with his goal, and I've always said should be getting more minutes than he already does. There's been opportunities for it, especially with Martinelli's been kind of up and down. And even with Nketiah, who I genuinely believe doesn't really contribute as much as maybe a Trossard or Gabriel Jesus can. So for that reason alone, yeah, I think it's going to be a mega high scoring game, and it's going to be quite a fun spectacle. Hopefully it's 3-2, but I can obviously see it being more reasonable with the 2-1 win.
Yeah, my thinking is I think Arsenal will sort of be in charge of this game, and I think it's going to be Arsenal 2-0 up and then Spurs score a goal and make it a bit interesting towards the end. I actually quite liked Arsenal defense, especially now that Gabriel is back and David Raya is in goal rather than Ramsdale. So for that reason, I feel like they're going to be better defensively now, but they do face probably their toughest opposition in terms of offensive teams in Spurs so far, so I could definitely see the 3-2 happening as well. Brighton against Bournemouth, we have the same fixture again. It is 3-0 for Brighton. So we're both banking on a clean sheet for Estepinian now as well, and yeah, I hope that's the case as well, because I'm a huge fan of Estepinian. I've talked so much about how Estepinian should never be dropped, but either way, 3-0. Bournemouth haven't really gotten the best start. They have looked okay at times, but they've also been like one of the weaker teams in the league so far. So how do you think the Iraola thing is going for Bournemouth, and do you think they'll turn it around at some point, or do you think they'll be a target the whole season?
Yeah, I think they will eventually turn around. I think there's been some positives to be seen with how they play and etc. But I just think that the squad isn't good enough, generally speaking. So I think Iraola needs to get some players that are more suitable to his style of play. That being said, if you take a different manager and who have the squad, would they be able to do better? I don't think so. I just think that it's unfortunately one of those things where the squad isn't as good as it should be.
Yeah, we'll move quickly on to the next game, which is Chelsea and Aston Villa, and once again we have a disagreement. I have a 2-1 away win for Aston Villa. I've been really impressed with Aston Villa, but at the same time, I can see your point as well with 3-1 for Chelsea, because Aston Villa haven't really been the best in the bigger games so far this season. They've dominated weaker opposition, but against the better teams, maybe not so much. Like they've beaten Crystal Palace, beaten Everton, those guys, but then they lost 5-1 against Newcastle. So yeah, I can see the 3-1 result for Chelsea, but then again, it is Chelsea. So why do you feel Chelsea can bounce back now after being pretty disappointing the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of their sort of unluckiness has to go away at some point, because I felt genuinely, and I'm not saying this just because I have a little bit of sympathy towards them because my brother supports the club, but it's more just they've been super unlucky with a lot of their matches recently. A lot, like they could have easily beaten Liverpool, they easily could have beaten Bournemouth had the free kick gone in and all this type of stuff. So I think like it wouldn't surprise me if Jackson scored in this game, and it wouldn't surprise me if like Mudryk finally gets things going and stuff, and obviously Sterling, who's been fantastic all season, who's just not gone on the goal with them or the assist with them when he could have and should have. So I think that's what's going to be the thing that sort of gets them going. Had this not been a Stamford Bridge, I would have probably agreed with you with the Aston Villa win. But because it's a Stamford Bridge, I think this is sort of like there's so many teams that have this similar boiling point sort of thing where something's got to give. This has got to be the game where it does so, and that's why I feel that this is what's going to happen. I also think it benefits Chelsea not having any European play whilst these guys are off to the Conference League and stuff like that. So let's there's going to be some fatigue because I'm sure they'll rest certain players, but I still think Ollie Watkins or Diaby will play on Thursday. So, yeah, I think Chelsea will do with the extra rest as well. So, yeah, I think that will be the defining factor.
Yeah. Speaking of teams that play on Thursday, however, we have Liverpool against West Ham next, and both those teams are in the Europa League, which is kind of crazy considering the different squads and what happened last season. But West Ham, obviously, trophy-winning club, won the Conference League, part of the Europa League now, play against Baka Topola or something from Serbia, I think. Going to be interesting what type of team they're going to play there, and I think it's also going to be interesting to see what type of team Liverpool will put out in the Europa League as well. Because you'd imagine that this might be where they might actually rest Salah and have him ready for the league, because I think they could easily win in the Europa League without Salah, without their best player, and they have so many attacking talents that they can use as well. But in terms of the match between Liverpool and West Ham, I've gone for 3-2. I think these matches between Liverpool and West Ham are usually pretty fun and exciting, so I'm expecting sort of a fun and exciting game. I can see West Ham leading. West Ham have led in pretty much every single game so far this season, I think, even against Man City, against Bournemouth, and then they've obviously won the other games that they've played. So West Ham have been in the lead in every single game so far, and I could see that happening as well at Anfield. I can see a Mikel Antonio goal against Liverpool once again because he keeps scoring against them. But in the end, I think Liverpool just have the better squad and will end up beating West Ham 3-2. You have 3-1 for Liverpool, so do you think this is going to be like a convincing win for Liverpool, or do you think they'll leave it late like they did against Wolverhampton?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. It just it just depends which version of Liverpool we're gonna get. Because I could easily see them running riot and just running away with it. So part of me is just curious to which players they'll rest for Thursday and all this type of stuff. But yeah, I think Liverpool have started the season really well. They've had the Liverpool luck to them. I mean, when things were looking bad against Wolves, I told you, like, they're just gonna grind it out as they always do and have that luck with them. And sadly, I think they're gonna just not comfortably. I think it'll be a bit nervy, but I still think they'll edge out the win.
Yeah. And then finally, we have a more uneven game, I guess, between Sheffield United and Newcastle. We've both gone with a Newcastle win. I have a Newcastle clean sheet, and you don't have a Newcastle clean sheet, even though Sheffield United haven't really been the best. But they have been scoring a couple goals, to be fair, this season. But yeah, Newcastle hype is pretty high now after they kept a clean sheet against Brentford. They did also keep a clean sheet against Milan, but they really should have conceded in that match. So why do you think Sheffield United will have what Milan didn't have and will actually be able to score against Newcastle?
Yeah, because Cameron Archer won't try to backheel it after dribbling past 8 players like Rafael Leao did. He obviously tried to go for the greatest goal of all time rather than just shooting it like a normal person, because had he done that, he would have also scored. So my thinking is also because Sheffield United score most of their goals at home as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I think just at least with scoring, they've been in a decent harmony and stuff like that. They have Hammer, who I really like, Cameron Archer, who I think, again, I keep saying this, but he really shouldn't have gone to Sheffield.
I mean, he's apparently better than Leao also, so yeah.
In the sense that, I think he's a very good Premier League striker. It's just a shame that he didn't go to like a West Ham or something.
Yeah.
Hell, I would have taken him at Everton, but then we got Beto, so.
Yeah. Fair enough. Those are the results predictions for this week. I think it's looking pretty good. That's what I always think, though, and I usually get quite a bit of them wrong, but we'll see once again. Let's move on to more fixture ticker talk. We're going to look ahead to the next few game weeks. We have the double game week coming up for Luton and Burnley. That's why they are pretty high in the table when it comes to the easiest fixtures coming up. But we're just talking about Newcastle, and looking at Newcastle's fixtures, the next 5, you couldn't really ask for better defensive fixtures than that. You don't have a single Newcastle defender so far, and it's spoilers, you're not looking to bring one in either, at least in your initial plans. So what do you feel about the Newcastle defense in general? You can see the expected goals conceded. They're actually 3rd so far, even though they've had the worst schedule so far. So are your feelings about Newcastle defensively? And if you were to pick one, who would you choose out of Botman, Schär, and Trippier, or potentially Burn if you want to go with him?
It's tough because I think Botman's great. I think Trippier is good because obviously he creates chances and stuff like that. And he's been really unlucky this season because he has really good underlying stats. But I think at the end of the day, considering the fact that I have more expensive players everywhere else, I'd just go with Botman. Yeah. I think they look better with Botman because I always rated Botman. You're the one who was sort of like, Botman's been pretty leaky and all this type of shit. And
he made a couple of mistakes last season that I had him in FPL. A lot of that is FPL hurt. I'm gonna just be honest about that. But yeah.
But you were the first to be like, the minute he's come back, they look great. So I was like, fair enough. And I think so for me, it's Botman. I think he is such a towering presence. So I think eventually it should also lead up to a bit more offensive things, but I just still think Trippier's price tag is a bit too high. Otherwise, I'd recommend him when it comes to defensive players. I think Dan Barron is just a lanky prick. So
yeah, fair enough. I also think Botman is the best pick, as we'll get to when I talk about my team tomorrow. But yeah, that's Newcastle for you. I would suggest having a Newcastle defender at least one, but maybe not two. I don't know. That's something I'm struggling with as well. If I'm wanting to go with one or two, and that was the same with when I talked to Tim just now as well. He's also undecided if he wants to go with Fabian Schär on top of having Botman as well. But yeah, looking at the fixtures as well, you've already used your wildcard. And most people are looking to use their wildcard in Gameweek 9 or 10 because there's quite a bit of a fixture swing coming up there. You can see Liverpool especially have two really easy fixtures in Gameweek 9 and 10. You already have Salah, so you're actually pretty well set there. But you also have the likes of Spurs, for example, get really good fixtures from Gameweek 8. You don't have any Spurs attacking players currently. Aston Villa get really good fixtures from Gameweek 8 onwards as well. You don't have Aston Villa attacking players. So how are you looking to navigate this without a wildcard? Like, what is your priority in terms of transfers if you look at the players that are going to be popular in Gameweek 9 and 10?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty good with the minuses compared to my normal volatile self. So I think just banking on transfers and stuff like that will do me good. So I think I'm in just as good of a position as anyone. I think the main thing was the fact that I kept Salah. Bringing Salah in is always more difficult than taking Salah out in that regard. So if anything, God forbid anything happened to him, it'll be easy for me to navigate getting him out. But getting him in, that's going to be a tough call for some fantasy managers. But he hasn't blanked, so why would I ever consider taking him out?
So looking at the next three fixtures for Liverpool, because most people will bring him in either Gameweek 9 or Gameweek 10, Salah, on the wildcard. How do you feel he's going to do in those games? He has Tottenham away and Brighton away. Tough fixtures on paper, but there's also two teams that he can't score against. So what do you think about Salah as well, as like an imminent pick as for the next 3 game weeks before most people will get him? Do you think it should be a priority for people who don't have him to bring him in early, or do you think you can wait until Gameweek 9 10 to get him?
No, of course. I think that's where it benefits them to hold out, especially considering the fact that some of these other players have easier matches. But that being said, he is still Mo Salah. He's just a penalty away from crazy points, and a lot of these teams tend to concede pens and stuff. So I think it's going to be beneficial for us Salah owners to stand pat, and I think people should worry, but I don't think it's a big enough worry where people should freak out and try and bring him in, because we were very lucky to get 10 points from him, but that should have been 14 points, for example, and all this type of stuff. And so Salah's done enough damage, but not damage that people need to freak out about just yet. But I think after 3 weeks, we'll be able to say whether he did enough damage or not.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that big, massive, 15, 20-point haul, and I think it could happen in the next 3 game weeks, but it's not set in stone. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't happen now against West Ham, obviously, because I want West Ham to win as a West Ham fan, but he has a history of scoring against West Ham as well and having those 15-point type of games as well. So I could see that happening, and also Spurs and Brighton as well. It's gonna be tough fixtures. So yeah, like you said, I don't think you should rush to bring him in if you don't have him already, but it feels good having him. I think we both can agree on that.
Yeah, sure.
Speaking of having Salah, I have done the weekly wildcard drafts as always this week, and I obviously have Salah in the squad. He keeps going up the ranks because as we're moving closer and closer to game week 9 and 10, it's more and more important to have Salah, especially if you are using your wildcard. So I think wildcard, if you're wildcarding this game week, Salah is pretty much a must because yeah, you're going to want to have him at some point this season. Also, Álvarez, he's actually a new player into the team, but I had him in my weekly wildcard draft 2 weeks in a row, game week 4 and game week 5, I think, and then I took him out for the game week 3 and game week 4, I think I had him in my weekly wildcard draft. And then I removed him because I thought he was going to be rested, but then he played 90 minutes even after the grueling international break schedule, and it seems like he's just going to play pretty much every single game until Kevin De Bruyne is back. Not every single game, but pretty much. But yeah. He's one of the new players coming in, or new players. Álvarez, I've always been a big fan of his. But I also have Rashford coming in after he blanked. I want to talk with you about Rashford as well, because you have Bruno Fernandes, you don't have Rashford. How do you see Rashford doing going forward after that performance last time? He was pretty selfish, but he did get a lot of chances as well, playing in sort of like, with the Man United diamond, he sort of played as like a second striker almost next to Højlund, and it seems like those two guys have a pretty good connection already. It's just Rashford needs to recognize that he has a proper striker he can pass to now. But yeah, what do you think about Rashford going forward? Do you think he is someone you would have if you were wildcarding this week, or do you think he's someone that, because Man United are not doing so well, that he's someone you would drop for someone like Son, for example?
Personally, it's very difficult to say, and it's really annoying because, yeah, I'm really frustrated with Bruno, for example. But I figured that Rashford owners would be pretty annoyed with him too, but it's the difference between him and Fernandes is it's actually quite a great FPL asset thing to do, to be a bit selfish in those situations, because that will cause them to create chances and to score. Bruno's so selfish that, or unselfish, that he's playing at center back, so you know, it's two sides of the coin. Would I potentially transfer Rashford out? Maybe, but then it would have to be for a midfielder that you know is going to be playing well and all this type of stuff, or has easier fixtures. But Man United have a good swing of fixtures coming up, so yeah. I would just say stand pat with him, or potentially, if you need to save money, then bring Bruno Fernandes in. But even that feels like a sideways move when you already have Rash, so I'd just say stand pat.
Yeah, and looking at this team, are there any players that you would like to bring in? I know you mentioned last week when I did the weekly wildcard draft, you mentioned Eze, and now he actually has 2 pretty good fixtures as well. If you're looking at the fixture ticker, he's actually someone that you might be able to bring in as well. He has Fulham at home this game week, and then he has Nottingham Forest at home in game week 8. Is he one of the players you would like to bring in to this wildcard squad, or is there someone else that stands out to you that I don't have in the squad?
Eze is definitely one of them.
Or would you rather go with Edouard?
I think Edouard's getting like no love, and he's scoring every. I mean, we talked about Awoni, and we're just like, oh, you know, he's the GOAT. I think it's 9 games in a row where he has gotten like a goal or an assist. But Edouard's pretty much done the same thing this season. Has he blanked this season? I don't think so.
Maybe one time. I think he scored 4 goals in the 5 games. So yeah, he scored 2 goals in one of the games. So yeah, I think he has blanked, because I don't think Crystal Palace score in every game, but he's done pretty well for himself.
Yeah, and I think at his price point as well, he's very easily someone you could stash on the bench, but also very much someone you could just fire all cylinders and just start in. Especially considering the fixtures that you said. But other than that, no, I think this is as good as it gets. I understand why you got Kabore back, considering the fact that he looked good against Fulham and should have probably gotten an assist if he wasn't so unlucky. But again, I am going to be avoiding Burnley and Luton players like the plague. So
yeah. So yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Is there someone that you would take out of this team? Is there one of the picks that you don't agree with currently? Madison has some tough fixtures, but he has easier fixtures coming up as well. And you could easily bench him. That's my reasoning. But yeah, any players you would take out of this team or replace, you think?
Matty Cash.
He's not in the team. He's dropped.
I know.
You said that last week.
I know. I just point out the fact that he's gone. Stupid Matty Cash.
I think Cash could be good eventually, but yeah.
Of course. I mean, he's the guy who's gone like over 20 points in a single game week. That wasn't a fluke. He is good, and he's good for Poland as well. It's just, I don't know. Aston Villa defensively have been so up and down. So yeah, no, I think Botman back in looks good, especially considering their swing of fixtures. Gusto always performs when I don't play him, and yeah, other than that, Leno's all of a sudden the best goalkeeper in the Prem, and Areola's Areola. He gets a lot of saves.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll take it. I'm pretty happy with the wildcard draft, and I see a lot of other content creators who have made their own wildcard drafts with a pretty similar team. I think the midfield is also pretty like sort of template as well, if you can call it midfield template at this point. But yeah, let's move on to your current plans, and we've touched upon it already. You have a player called Johan Vissa, who you are very upset with, and that's why you're looking to sell him. But Álvarez is also like, I understand it from a point that you want Álvarez, and it makes more sense to sell Vissa than it makes sense to sell Archer, because you'd have to make that money up elsewhere. But yeah, no fears about Vissa scoring against Everton?
No, 100% fears, because he has missed so many chances that eventually he'll get a hat trick. And would it be against us? Yes, just because that is the price of being an Everton fan. Like, oh, you watch Goal of the Year from 2007, 2008. Oh, it's Drogba scoring a volley from 30 yards out against Everton at Goodison Park. So I'm used to this. It's like any Football Manager player where it's like, oh, person you conceded to, first goal of the season. It's written in the stars that Wissa is going to score a hat trick against Everton. However, I'm so frustrated. It's actually frustrating watching him play because he's just missing chances. He's just missing that half step that a striker needs to be putting these balls in and stuff like that. Like, he got a cross straight to his head, and he looked surprised that the ball actually reached him, and he headed out. There was one when he's meant to like stick his leg out, and he completely fluffed it because he didn't. Again, it seems like he doesn't believe his players or like teammates are going to actually pass him the ball. So he's always just one step behind when it comes to putting the ball away. So yeah, it's really frustrating. I'd rather take someone like Álvarez, who I love, who I like watching play, and who's playing consistently good and obviously plays for a very good side. It's just frustrating because it feels pointless having two strikers from the same team, right? Because Haaland eventually will be the one who gets all the points, sort of thing. Like, it's been... Because that's just what tends to happen. But, like, you look at Barcelona with João Felix and Lewandowski, one of them will eventually dwarf the other, and also they benefit from having each other on the pitch as well. So it's a tough thing. That's why I liked spreading it out, and potentially maybe even looking at Wilson or Isak, because Newcastle's matches look good too. But it's Julian Alvarez, man. It's time I get him back. Is there a way where I can wait with Alvarez a week? Maybe, because the team news will be out before and about City. So that could be the main reason why I don't go for Alvarez straight away, if there's any chance of him being benched. So
yeah, that's my only suggestion, waiting for the team news potentially. But I've also seen other people say that if you want to buy Alvarez, it should be now, because it's going to go up in price by the time this podcast is out. Actually, he's going to go up in price tonight, which is Wednesday, as of time of recording. But I don't think you have any like issues when it comes to money in the bank. You have 0.7 in the bank, so I think you can wait it out and wait for the early team news. But at the same time, I don't think there's much chance he's going to be rested, seeing as City don't really have any other players to play, with Bernardo being out. Grealish, who's apparently back in training now, but I don't think he's ready. Pep said he's going to be out for a week or 10 days or something. They don't really have any options to play unless they play Oscar Bob, potentially. They could do that as well. But yeah, I think Alvarez is pretty nailed on to start, and I think he's going to start most games and be a really good productive player as well. So I understand the transfer, even though I'm not the biggest fan of selling players when they have easy home fixtures, as I've learned from selling SA before a home fixture against Wolverhampton. That bit me in the ass. So that could happen again, especially seeing as Alvarez has the whole curse of the most bought player sort of thing with him as well. But yeah, the other transfer that you're thinking about is getting Diaby in, and it's just a matter of who you're selling. If it's Sterling or Fernandes, it seems like are the two most likely players you sell. Because Mbeumo has good fixtures, the same fixtures as Wissa, except he's more lethal, I guess. And Salah, who we've already talked about how important it is to have Salah in your team.
Yeah.
But yeah, are you leaning towards Sterling or Fernandes currently, or are you leaning towards just leaving it and having two transfers for next week instead?
It's gonna all come down to a little bit team news stuff, and etc. And if I hear anything about injuries or anything like that, but Fernandes is frustrating me because I just don't think he's looked good except for when he puts the Portugal shirt on, and Sterling has just been frustrating because I actually think he's looked really good. Yeah. He's just been really unlucky, and I can't just stick around waiting for unlucky to go around when Diaby, who's had similar, luck with certain things, like he got a goal disallowed and stuff like that. But, he's scoring every other week, it feels like, and I really like him, and I think he's going to just go up and up in Aston Villa stock, folklore, whatever you want to call it, because I think he's just so good. So yeah,
I think Diaby is also a really good player that I'm really considering bringing in. I wish I had him for Game Week 1, which I sort of almost did, but I went with SA instead, and that ended up being the worst decision so far of my season, which has gone pretty well so far. But yeah, I think the one thing that I would say is probably look at potentially getting in a Newcastle defender, especially if we get news from Pochettino about Chilwell not playing or like not being favored and stuff. Potentially even Gusto, because Poch had some comments about the Chelsea fullbacks last time that he thought they were too offensive, and that he wanted them to be a bit more defensive, to not open up too much space, and especially against Aston Villa, who are really good on the counter. I think that's going to happen as well. So I would potentially look to bring in a Newcastle defender for Tavares, seeing as you might have the money. But if you do with Alvarez, you might not have the money to do that. But yeah, bringing in a Newcastle defender is something that I would potentially look at if I were you. But yeah, I also think I would probably just stick to Sterling and Bruno. If I would sell one of them, it would probably be Bruno Fernandes, I think, just because Man United haven't looked that good. I know Chelsea haven't looked that good either, but you have backed them to win 3-1 against Aston Villa, so selling Sterling to get Diaby would be kind of counterproductive in terms of your prediction.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my thoughts about your team. But other than that, I think your team is actually pretty decent, and yeah, the luck will turn around at some point with both Sterling and Fernandes, and yeah, potentially Wissa as well, but he's going to go out probably. But yeah, we'll see. And then the final point of the agenda is talking about Chemo's team, since I already talked about Tim's team with Tim, the manager of the week. Chemo, he has done one transfer already. He has sold Nick Jackson and bought Álvarez. He was just tired of seeing Nick Jackson fail to perform for Chelsea. And yeah, he's jumped on the bandwagon with Álvarez. He has another potential transfer that he's looking at, and that is the transfer that I was talking about with you with, in terms of selling Jordan Bayer, who has a double game week next week. So I think it's kind of weird to sell Bayer, especially seeing as he has Saliba and Chilwell, who are both have some issues for different reasons. Saliba with his fixtures and Chilwell with his rotation issues. So I would probably not do the -4 either way, because you're basically banking on Botman getting a clean sheet. Otherwise, you'll get, if Botman gets a clean sheet, you'll get the exact same points, basically. So you need Botman to get a clean sheet to break even if you do a -4 to bring in a Newcastle defender. So I don't think that's worth it, especially seeing as Botman doesn't have any attacking potential. But yeah, do you have any comments about Chemo's team? Just to end it, do you think there's any any potential transfers he should consider, or should he just stay with the one transfer of Nick Jackson to Alvarez and let the team be as it is?
Yeah, I would say that to just maybe stick with just Jackson and seeing what happens. But yeah, if he ends up doing Botman in, yeah, fair enough. That's a easy way of benching Saliba against Spurs, who he has two midfielders of who he wants them to score. So seems like a easy swap out as well. But yeah, I think
it's more the -4 though, because if Newcastle keep a clean sheet, sure, Botman got 3 bonus points last time around, but he also had one big chance created. I don't know how he got that one. I haven't checked the highlights again to see that, but Botman is basically capped at 6 points, maybe 9 points, and he needs to get that for that transfer to break even with a -4. So
yeah, of course, but I think it's personally, I think it's fine just sticking with Jackson to Alvarez. But if he were to do the Botman thing, I wouldn't hate it, just considering long term that's a good transfer. But I think it can wait a week.
Yeah. Fair enough. And that's pretty much it for the podcasts. I'm actually going to get picked up by my dad because I'm going home to my parents to watch some Champions League. And he actually called me like 5 minutes ago. So sort of need to end the podcast there. But yeah, if you want to be manager of the week, we talked about Tim's team with Tim. He was going to just stand pat with his team, and I think that's actually a pretty good thing to do. He could also get Char or Kabore in if he's feeling really frisky with Kabore. But if you want to be a manager of the week, Kevin, you can also already be manager of the week if you get the top score in the FPL Scope League, but you need to be the top scorer of the FPL Scope Mini League for that particular game week. And if you want to join the Mini League, you can add or join the league with the league code V9JT0D. And with that, I'll leave the final word to you, Kevin. You can say whatever you want. Feel free. This is a safe space.
Yeah. Dice out if we don't get a point against Brentford.
With that, goodbye. Thank you.